Okay.
Hello, I'm here with Phoenix Muranetz, and she has called upon me to be the Indigenous Relations Director for the upcoming Awakened Women's Convergence happening this fall in the place now known as Arizona. My ancestral name is Pulxaneeks, and I come from Haisla First Nation on the northwest coast of the place now known as British Columbia. And I currently reside on the unceded Coast Salish territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish people in the place now known as Vancouver. So, welcoming you, Phoenix, to introduce yourself and share a bit about where you were born and which territory you're on.
Thank you, Pulxaneeks. Well, I was born on the territories of the Coast Salish, Songhees, and Sooke territories, which are now known as Vancouver Island, in the place now known as British Columbia. And I grew up in the area of the Songhees, actually. So for most of my young adult life, I grew up with friends that lived on the Songhees Nation there, and grew up in this area, very connected with nature and the sea and with the people here. And yeah, it's been I'm back here now.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So I'd love to hear, Phoenix, like, why did you call upon me? Why did you call upon me to be in this role of Indigenous relations connecting? And yeah, why didn't you just do it yourself?
Well, as we've been exploring, these are the kinds of repairing the relationship, I think, between our peoples. It's time. It's just really time that it happens. And I think we've waited for our governments and, politicians and people in positions of power to do that work for us. And actually, it's not going to come from them. It's going to come from us, the people, to do that work. And a big part of this shift and this awakening that's happening on the planet is really also, awakening to the wounds that are still there from, our ancestors that have put it upon your ancestors, and acknowledging those wounds and acknowledging that the relationship has been broken. And I think that's the first step towards repairing the relationships. And so in being able to hold space for the kinds of conversations that will bring our people closer together from all different nations, from all different countries and tribes, is going to take a really beautiful container like Awakened Women and really skilled facilitators who understand the needs that are present, who understand the kinds of conversations that need to take place, and the ways of really approaching this with respect.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to hear a bit about, like, if you were to finish a sentence, I was born during a time when?
I was born during a time when, that's a deep question. I was born during a time when there was a lot of oppression of peoples, oppression of the feminine, oppression of Indigenous, colored, minorities, those in a lower economic level, those who didn't have access to resources. And I think that still exists today in so many ways. And part of my life's mission is to unify people, is to bring about unification through important conversations and through the connection of peoples. So having grown up in the 80s, I think there's a lot of work that wasn't completed during the 60s, and so it's now really kind of time for us to really move forward in that work.
Mm-hmm.
Finally.
Beautiful. And welcoming you to finish a sentence. As a white person.
As a white person, I am starting to become more and more aware of the ways that other voices are suppressed or oppressed, or just not given a seat at the table to be heard. As a white person, I understand the inherent advantages that come just in being born white, just because of the color of my skin. As a white person, I also acknowledge that it's part of my responsibility to acknowledge that and then to make things right, and to start to look at the ways in which my ancestors and the people that are white have contributed to that as well, that continue to do so to this day through having conversations with my Indigenous friends, through having really open conversations around how can we really fully offer our apologies and our heartfelt love and move forward in compassion and understanding and reconciliation.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I want to share that as an Indigenous person, every time I hear that, I feel such a tender place in my heart, carried awake, and almost to the point of tears in feeling that sincere love being offered. And I just really want to acknowledge that in you, Phoenix, and how just knowing you and being in this life together has really impacted me as an Indigenous person in my healing journey, in knowing that there is a lot of love, there's big love there that wants to happen between people such as yourself who hear that call and who are aware of what we've been through and who have the vision like you do. And I feel very grateful and very blessed to be working on this project with you. So I'd love to hear what does your heart want to say to the hearts of the first peoples of this continent?
I think I'll start with the dream that I had recently, that I shared with you briefly. And I've always felt like a really deep connection with the peoples of the land here. You know, with the Sook. I used to have dreams that they would speak to me in my dreams, and they would offer me support and wisdom. And I had a dream recently that it was like I just didn't even know that yearning, that kind of desire existed within me. But in the dream I saw all these Indigenous peoples from around the world, and they were in their regalia of their people, and they were in a parade celebrating some kind of like release of energy that had been withheld from them. Some kind of like, there was like, it was just a celebration, and it was like this freedom that had been like opened up, you know? And I just remember watching that in my dream, feeling so happy, just so happy that finally, you know, that we got to live to see this time in our story, in our collective story. And, you know, it's in my deepest heart that I just want to see balance restored to the planet. And I think that balance cannot be restored to the planet if the peoples that originally lived in all these different places around the world are not fully honored and actually like acknowledged and respected and revered and apologized to, you know, like it still exists the fact that I live in a country where we're celebrating our 150-year country anniversary, but we didn't get this land because it was given to us. It was taken from other people. And the more I read about the stories about how like they were forced into these reservations basically because like food and supplies were withheld from them. through starvation, and, you know, like just hearing about this stuff, and it's like, and yet their land still hasn't been returned to them, right? We're all living on unceded territories. And so, you know, it's just my wish and desire that we come together and acknowledge and apologize and really like honor what has happened between our peoples, and do it in a way that's right, and actually listen to them, you know, what wants to be heard, what do you want to say, and listen with an open heart finally to like actually heal the wounds between our peoples. You know, I think that is like that rift, that's like what needs to be healed first before, you know, the healing of the planet can occur.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing. I'd love to hear, you know, in this journey of putting yourself in this position of creating this awareness, the healing that needs to take place and being a voice for that. What supports you? What supports you in this journey?
You. Community, totally community. Like, because it's been kind of scary to talk about this kind of stuff, because it's so, I think it's filled with a lot of trepidation. We've talked about that a lot, that there's a lot of fear around, you know, will I say the right thing? Will I make a mistake? Will I say the wrong thing? You know, will I be judged? Will I be labeled? You know, for even wanting to have these conversations. I think, you know, a lot of people's even curiosity to want to start this process is like contained through fear, right? Of like, I don't want to say something that sounds racist or that is not informed. And so community, like friends like yourself, our Awakened Women community, who are like so ready and willing to like step forward in these kinds of conversations and healing and come together, that like really inspires me, even when it's so scary to continue moving forward. Because there's some days I'm like, oh my God, everything's going to fall apart. It's not going to happen. Like there's, you know, but I think they're just fears that of what's to come of healing, right? Because we fear our healing.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes all we've known is like the pain and the fear, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I just want to reflect back again, like what it's like for me as an Indigenous person to hear this. And I know that there are many voices like yourself that fill my life to overflowing. There's such a huge amount of compassion and love in the hearts of people such as yourself, who want to convey this to the Indigenous people, but just don't know how or where to start or what to say or who to tell. And like, so I feel a big calling in my life and in my heart to put myself in a position where I can convey that message between cultures. And it's so good to hear it from you and to have this sharing at this time, because I know there's a lot of, you know, my family, other Indigenous people going like, there's really lots of nice white people out there who care about us. And it's all like theoretically there is, but, you know, I don't know that they've you know, met any, like telling them about this new species of human. So thank you for being living proof of evidence of this thing that I've been trying to, you know, get out there and share. And, you know, like I said, I feel like there's a lot of love. You know, we've been through a lot. We've been through a lot as a people, and that's putting it lightly. And we're just, all we can really do is start where we are right now. And the fact is, the average person cannot tell you the traditional territory that they were born on. Mm. Even, you know, regardless of how much, you know, love and compassion and willingness they have in their heart to take part in these kind of conversations of Indigenous relationship building, there's just a base level of not knowing. And that's exactly where we're at. And that's, you know, that's okay. We're going to start where we're at. And so that's just acknowledging that and giving thanks for the unseen forces bringing us together at this time, the ancestors and spirit guides who are walking with us on this journey, guiding us as we walk in the direction of this new change, you know, acknowledging that we don't always know what's going to happen and we don't always know what it's going to take, but we're going to courageously walk in that direction anyway. And I just want to acknowledge the courage in your heart, Phoenix, to have reached out to me, you know, in this way of like admitting that you don't know, you don't always know, you know, what the next steps are to take, but you're willing to ask. And I really honor that. And I really like honor you, you know, as a woman, as someone from European ancestry, as someone whose ancestors settled in this place now known as Canada. I really honor you in my heart and in my life for taking these steps, taking these necessary steps towards healing between the ancestry. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for facilitating these kinds of discussions between us. It's really, yeah, it's really, it's an honor, you know, to walk with you in this path. And I'm so curious, can you share with me what feathers you're holding from what?
These are some eagle feathers. This one I found in my village in the woods by you know, my homeland. This one was gifted to me actually by a fellow friend of ours in this community for bringing my native for showing up as an Indigenous person in this community, willing to share. And this one actually came to me during the time when my grandfather, who was a residential school survivor, he took his place amongst the ancestors a number of years ago when we brought his remains back to our ancestral land. And I found this in the driftwood at sunset. And so these are eagle feathers. They don't belong to me. I don't own them. They belong with me, and I'm the caretakers of them. And they're very precious to me. Everything in my life changed when someone handed me an eagle feather and gave me permission to speak from my heart. And so when I really want to remember that place of truth and centeredness within myself, I hold an eagle feather to remember where I come from and who I am and why I am, and the ancestors that walk with me, and asking them to witness this at this time.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I'm so honored, and I just want to thank you, Pulxaneeks, for being part of this vision of reconciliation and coming together as a community and doing this kind of work. It's so important and so valuable, and it is on the very leading edge of what's happening right now in the world. So I'm so excited and happy and blessed that it is you, as my dear friend, who is also walking this and giving it more roots and more soil and nourishment from that space. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Well, this concludes our sharing at this time. So thank you all for listening, and all the hearts and people who these words will touch. I honor you, and I honor that place in your heart where these words have gone to, and give thanks for your presence, your unseen and sometimes seen presence on this path that we're walking. Thank you.
Thank you.